Hi moms and dads, Dr. Nicole here with another family-focused tech tip. One of the questions that parents ask very often at my clinic is what kinds of digital devices or screen time activities are appropriate for my child based on their age. Some of the specific questions come up like, how old should my child be before they have a smartphone? Or when is social media activity appropriate? Or what should my preschooler be doing? So let me break down for you some recommendations for that, just to give you some guidelines that you can think about for your own children. So the American Academy of Pediatrics is the only organization that's really put out comprehensive recommendations for parents around these issues. So I'm going to break down according to the ages that they talk about in their recommendations. The recommendation for babies from birth through 18 months is that they are not exposed to or using digital devices unless it's something like FaceTime with a family member. Now, it seems weird to even think about that we would need to talk about babies using these kinds of devices, but the reality is many, even really young infants are being placed in front of things like tablets or TVs or things like that, and it's just not appropriate or healthy for their development. So in that age group, no device use unless it's something like FaceTime with grandma and grandpa, and obviously moms and dads are using it then with them. When we get into 18-month-olds through 4-year-olds, the recommendation is really limited use, no more than 1 hour a day, and with a parent engaging with them. So some examples of appropriate activities might be watching an age-appropriate show together with a parent, reading an interactive book, something like that that's really age-appropriate for a really limited amount of time. For kids in the 5 to 8-year-old group, here we're starting to think about how much time do we want them using devices and screens outside of school, because the reality is kids in this age group are probably using devices in school. The general rule of thumb is to not do more than 2 hours of screen time outside of school, and really we want to be focusing on prioritizing other activities before screen time. Things like movement activities and physical exercise, play with friends, hobbies, those kinds of things, chores that they need to get done, prioritizing other activities before we get on devices. Kids in this 5 to 8-year-old age group, smartphones are not appropriate for them, and neither is social media. As we look to kids getting older into the 9 to 11 year age range, here again, we want to focus on prioritizing activities besides device usage. So other kinds of maybe sports and extracurriculars, things they need to help with around the house, spending time with friends in person, those things should all be priorities before device use. And again, it is not appropriate from a developmental standpoint for kids at this age group to have social media or to have smartphones. Now, if there is a safety reason why a child in this age group may need to have access to a phone, they can use a simple flip phone, and that will allow them to text and make phone calls if parents need to stay in touch with them. As we get into the 12 to 14-year-old age range, here we're starting to give kids some more responsibility. So still prioritizing non-device activities, other things that they need to be doing in addition to or instead of device use, but we may consider a smartphone for kids in this age if they are exhibiting responsibility, the ability to follow and understand rules, if they're being truthful about things, managing themselves and their belongings well. So it's not so much about just age alone, but about their readiness for these kinds of things. It's also important, if you're going to consider a smartphone for kids at this age, to have clear expectations laid out for what your expectations of the child are going to be in relation to the device, how it's going to be used, what your monitoring plan is going to be, all of those types of things. You may consider some limited social media use with restrictions, keeping in mind that many social media sites don't even allow children in this age range to use their sites yet. But if you are going to do that, there should be significant parent oversight and monitoring of what's going on. And then finally, as we get into the 15 to 17-year-old age group, here we're starting to give them even more leeway to use these devices to learn how to make healthy choices, still prioritizing other activities first that they need to get done. Smartphone access, again, is appropriate if they are demonstrating responsible and safe behavior across the board, and if they're demonstrating that they are able and willing to follow the rules that you've set, not only for that, but for other things. Social media access, you can broaden that at this point, again, with frequent communication with kids about what they're doing on there, what they're being exposed to, and some oversight and monitoring. Now, some things to keep in mind for kids of all ages who are using any kind of device. Some general rules: no devices in the bedroom at night, not safe or healthy for kids of any age. I recommend that mealtimes be device-free. Good research on how important that is for families to connect during that time and for kids to be able to focus on eating and family time and not have devices. Also important from a visual standpoint for kids to take breaks every 30 to 60 minutes for their eye health. So using that close-up vision for, their screen time stuff, they need to stop and take breaks at least once an hour to use their distance vision. And then, as always, it is important as parents to be engaged in device use with kids, more so when they're young, but even as they get older. Frequent communication, reviewing of the rules, be actively engaged. Don't just hand kids devices and then step back from it and hope that it works out. That active parent engagement is a key piece to helping kids develop safe and healthy tech habits now and into the future. Hope you find that helpful. I'll be back next time with some more family-focused tech tips.